Marcus Chen stood at attention near the conference room entrance, his eyes scanning the crowded chamber with practiced ease. The human mercenary had seen many strange things since leaving Earth 5 years ago, but diplomatic meetings still made him uncomfortable. Too many bodies, too many exits to watch, too many ways things could go wrong. Harmony's gate station hummed with activity around him. The diplomatic hub floated in neutral space, a massive wheel of metal and glass where 100 different species conducted their business. Today's meeting was supposed to be simple. Captain Sarah Okonkwo needed to finalize a trade agreement with the Tholian Empire. Marcus was there to make sure nothing went wrong. He touched the collar of his dark uniform, feeling the weight of responsibility. Sarah had hired him 3 months ago after pirates attacked her freighter. She learned quickly that having a human on security detail made most troublemakers think twice. Humans were still new to the Galactic community, only 50 years since first contact. Most aliens saw them as curiosities. Some saw them as barbarians. The Tholians definitely belonged to the second group. Commander Vexthor dominated the room without trying. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scaled skin reflecting the soft lights in shades of deep purple. His species evolved on a world of shallow seas and warm temperatures, and they had ruled a dozen systems for 3,000 years. Vexthor wore his military decorations like armor, each medal a story of conquest or glory. His reputation preceded him. Decorated officer, war hero, commander of the Third Fleet. Also, Marcus had learned, a complete bastard. The negotiations had started well enough that morning. Captain Okonkwo presented her proposal with confidence. She wanted to establish regular trade routes between human colonies and Tholian markets. Textiles, rare minerals, and technological components. Fair prices, reliable delivery, mutual benefit. But Vexthor had other ideas. "These terms are unacceptable," the commander said, his translator rendering his hissing speech into flat mechanical English. "Human goods are inferior. You will accept 30% less than asking price, and you will provide exclusive shipping rights." Sarah kept her composure. Marcus admired that about her. The captain had ice in her veins when it counted. "Commander, with respect, those terms would bankrupt my company. We're offering market rates based on concordate standards." Concordate standards. Vexthor's lipless mouth curved into something like a sneer. The concordate caters to weak species. Your kind especially. Deathworlders, they call you. Barely civilized apes from a gravity well too strong for proper evolution. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he remained still. This was Sarah's negotiation. He was just the muscle. The human muscle that made Vexthor uncomfortable, judging by the way the commander's eyes kept flicking toward him. Ambassador Koresh, the insectoid mediator, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Commander, perhaps we should take a recess. Allow cooler heads to prevail." "I am perfectly cool," Vexthor said. He turned his full attention to Sarah. "You will accept my terms, Captain, or you will leave this station with nothing. The Tholian Empire does not negotiate with primitives." Sarah stood slowly, her dark eyes hard. "Then we're done here. I don't do business with bullies, Commander, no matter how many medals they wear." The room went silent. Even Koresh stopped clicking. In galactic society where status and hierarchy meant everything, Sarah had just delivered a mortal insult. She had called a decorated Tholian commander a bully, in public, on record. Vexthor's scales flushed darker, a sign Marcus recognized as rage. The commander moved around the conference table with surprising speed for his size. He crossed the distance to Sarah in 3 long strides. Marcus shifted his weight, ready to intercept. But Vexthor ignored him, focusing entirely on the captain. "You dare speak to me this way? A cargo runner from a mongrel species." "I dare," Sarah said quietly. "And I'm leaving now." She turned toward the door. Toward Marcus. Toward escape from this disaster of a meeting. Vexthor's hand shot out. The slap echoed through the conference room like a gunshot. The commander's scaled palm struck Sarah across the face with enough force to snap her head sideways. She stumbled, crying out in pain and shock. For the Tholians, it was discipline, a superior reminding an inferior of their place. Vexthor had probably done it 100 times before to subordinates and servants. A quick strike to establish dominance. Nothing serious by his species' standards, but Marcus Chen was not Tholian. His body moved before his brain could catch up. 20 years of training on Earth streets, 5 years in special forces, 3 more as a mercenary in the most dangerous corners of human space. all of it compressed into pure reflex. His nervous system, evolved on a world of apex predators and sudden death, recognized one absolute truth. A strike against his principle was a threat. Threats were eliminated. Marcus crossed the 3 feet between himself and Vexthor in a blur. His right hand came up in a precisely angled strike, fingers rigid, thumb locked. The edge of his hand caught the commander just below the jaw, exactly where the translator chip had shown him the Tholian spine connected to the skull. The crack was surprisingly quiet. Vexthor's eyes went wide. His mouth opened. No sound came out. The commander's body remained standing for a moment, as if it hadn't received the message yet. Then his head tilted at an angle that no living thing's head should tilt. It separated cleanly. The Tholian's advanced healing factor, which could seal most wounds in minutes, meant nothing against complete decapitation. Vexthor's head hit the polished floor with a wet thump. His body followed a second later, purple blood pooling around the expensive carpet. Marcus stood frozen, his hand still extended, watching the life fade from the commander's eyes. 6 seconds. From the slap to the separation, the station's security cameras had recorded every moment in crystal clarity. The conference room erupted into chaos. Koresh shrieked and skittered backward. Sarah clutched her face, staring at Marcus in horror. The Tholian aides reached for weapons that weren't there. The station was neutral ground. No arms allowed except for registered security personnel. Alarms began blaring. Heavy security doors slammed shut across every entrance. The station's AI voice echoed through the halls. Lockdown initiated. All personnel remain in current locations. Security breach in conference room 7. Marcus lowered his hand slowly. He looked at his fingers, still steady, no tremor. His pulse was barely elevated. His body had done exactly what 25 years of training had taught it to do. Identify threat, neutralize threat, assess for additional threats. But his mind was catching up now, and with it came the crushing weight of realization. He had just killed a decorated Tholian commander. On a neutral diplomatic station, in front of witnesses, on camera. His career was over. Possibly his life. Sarah found her voice first. Marcus, she whispered, still holding her reddening cheek. What did you do? He couldn't answer. What could he say? That his body had moved faster than thought? That on Earth you didn't survive by asking questions when someone attacked? That every instructor he'd ever trained under had drilled the same lesson into him? Hesitation means death? The security doors opened and armed guards poured in. They weren't human, mostly Vrexian, a species known for calm professionalism. They took in the scene with quick, efficient glances. The headless commander, the human with blood on his hand, the shocked witnesses. Hands where we can see them, the lead guard said, his weapon trained on Marcus. Marcus raised both hands slowly, palms out. I'm complying, he said quietly. No resistance. They swarmed him, pulling his arms back, securing restraints around his wrists. The metal was cold against his skin. They were gentle enough, professional, but their eyes held something new when they looked at him. Not just caution, fear. As they led him toward the door, Marcus looked back once. Sarah met his eyes, her expression unreadable. Koresh was already on his communication device calling for medical teams and crisis management. And on the floor, Commander Vexthor's head stared at nothing, his expression frozen in eternal surprise. The guards pushed Marcus into the corridor. Through the station windows he could see the stars beyond, cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, the footage was already spreading. 6 seconds that would change everything. He had defended his captain. He had eliminated a threat. He had done exactly what his training demanded, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. After they left, Marcus sat alone in his cell, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were watching him, judging him. Axis Prime was beautiful in a way that made Marcus uncomfortable. The capital world of the Galactic Concordat had been terraformed over thousands of years into a paradise of gentle hills, calm seas, and perfect weather. Nothing dangerous grew here. Nothing deadly hunted here. It was a world designed for civilized beings who had long ago conquered nature. Marcus hated it. The High Court building rose from the center of the capital city like a crystal mountain. Thousands of species had contributed to its construction, each adding their own architectural style. The result was stunning and chaotic, a monument to diversity and cooperation. Today, that monument would decide if humans belonged in that cooperation. The courtroom was massive, designed to accommodate hundreds of observers from dozens of species. Floating platforms held representatives from every major government. The gallery was packed with journalists, diplomats, and curiosity seekers. Cameras from every network in the galaxy focused on the central platform, where Marcus sat beside Ambassador Rodriguez and their legal team. Across from them sat the Tholian delegation. 17 officers in full military dress, their scales polished to mirror brightness. At their center sat Admiral Kreshtor, Vexthor's commanding officer and closest friend. The Admiral's eyes never left Marcus, and the hatred in them was clear. The judge was the eldest, one of the ancient beings who had founded the Concordat 10,000 years ago. She looked like a column of living crystal, light pulsing through her in patterns that translated into speech through the court's systems. "This court is convened," the translation said, the voice somehow carrying weight and authority. "The Tholian Empire versus Marcus Chen of Earth. The charges are murder, assault on a diplomatic official, and endangering interspecies relations. How does the defendant plead?" Marcus stood, his voice steady. "Not guilty, Your Honor." A murmur ran through the gallery. The Tholian delegation hissed in anger. "Very well," the judge said. "Prosecution, present your case." The lead prosecutor was Avrelian, a species known for their legal expertise and cold logic. She activated a holographic display and the footage played again. Vexthor slapping Sarah, Marcus moving. The strike, the fall, the death. "The facts are simple," the prosecutor said. "Commander Vexthor administered a minor disciplinary action, well within his cultural norms and rights as a senior official. The defendant responded with lethal force, killing the commander instantly. This was not self-defense. This was murder." She pulled up more images. Commander Vexthor was a decorated officer with 40 years of service. He had received the Star of Valor, the Campaign Medal, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He had saved lives, protected his people, and served with honor. And he was killed for a slap that would have left no permanent injury. The prosecutor turned to the gallery. "The defendant claims his training made him react instinctively. But training is a choice. Marcus Chen chose to become a soldier. He chose to learn how to kill. He chose to place himself in a situation where his deadly reflexes might be triggered. Every death caused by those reflexes is his responsibility." She sat down and the courtroom buzzed with discussion. Rodriguez stood, his formal robes catching the light. "Your Honor, the prosecution would have you believe this is simple. A man chose to kill, therefore he is guilty. But they ignore one crucial fact. Choice requires time. Conscious choice requires the ability to think, to consider, to decide. Marcus Chen had 0.3 seconds. That is not enough time for conscious thought. That is reflex, pure and simple." Rodriguez activated his own display. Images of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. The blue and green world looked peaceful from space, but the next images told a different story. Hurricanes that could level cities. Earthquakes that could split continents. Volcanic eruptions that darkened skies. Predators with teeth and claws. Diseases that killed millions. "This is Earth," Rodriguez said. "The most hostile inhabited world in known space. Gravity 30% higher than galactic standard. Weather systems that can kill in minutes. Megafauna that hunted our ancestors as prey. On Earth, you evolved to survive or you died. There was no third option." He pulled up comparative data. The average galactic species has a threat response time of 2 to 4 seconds. Humans average 0.5 seconds. Why? Because on Earth, hesitation meant death. Our ancestors who couldn't react fast enough were killed by predators, by rivals, by nature itself. We evolved speed because we had to. Rodriguez gestured to Marcus. This man was trained by Earth's military, among the most elite forces on our world. They took our natural reflexes and honed them further. They trained him to recognize threats and neutralize them instantly. Not because they wanted to create a monster, but because they needed to create a survivor. When Commander Vexthor struck Captain Okonkwo, Marcus's brain had 0.3 seconds to process the information. In that time, his training identified a threat pattern, an authority figure using physical violence against a smaller target. On Earth, that pattern often precedes lethal intent. His body responded according to its training, because 0.3 seconds is not enough time to consider cultural differences or diplomatic implications. The judge's light pulsed thoughtfully. The court recognizes the defense's argument, but we must ask, If humans are this dangerous, this reactive, do they belong in civilized space? It was the question Rodriguez had been waiting for. Your Honor, I'd like to call our first witness, Dr. Talmira, xenobiologist specializing in Deathworld evolution. A slender, bird-like alien took the stand. Her feathers were colored in shades of silver and blue, and her large eyes blinked slowly as she settled onto the witness platform. Dr. Talmira, Rodriguez said, you've studied Deathworld species for 70 years. Can you explain to the court what makes a Deathworld? Certainly, she said, her voice musical. A Deathworld is any planet where the mortality rate from environmental factors exceeds 30% before reproduction age. Earth exceeds 50%. It is, quite literally, the most hostile inhabited world we have ever discovered. And how does this affect evolution? Rodriguez asked. Species from Deathworlds develop extreme survival adaptations, she explained. Faster reflexes, stronger bodies, heightened aggression responses. These are not choices. These are evolutionary necessities. Humans, specifically, developed the most advanced threat assessment system we have studied. They can identify potential dangers in milliseconds and respond appropriately. Is this response always violent? Rodriguez asked. No, Dr. Talmira said. Humans have very sophisticated threat scaling. A small threat receives a small response. A medium threat receives a medium response. But when a human perceives a lethal threat, their response is equally lethal. This is not cruelty. This is survival logic, the prosecutor stood. But Commander Vexthor was not a lethal threat. He slapped someone. How is that lethal? Dr. Talmira's feathers ruffled. Context is everything. In Tholian culture, a slap is discipline. In human culture, physical violence from an authority figure often escalates to greater violence. Marcus Chen's brain, trained through 25 years of experience, recognized a pattern. Unprovoked assault by a larger, stronger individual. His response was calibrated to eliminate the threat before it could escalate. Rodriguez called his next witness, a human combat instructor named Sergeant Maria Santos. She was small, compact, with the kind of casual readiness that marked career soldiers. Sergeant Santos, Rodriguez said, you trained special forces for Earth's military. Can you explain what Marcus was taught? Yes, sir, she said crisply. We train for threat elimination. When you're in hostile territory, you don't get second chances. You see a threat, you end it, you move on. We drill it thousands of times until it becomes automatic. Why automatic? Rodriguez asked. Because thinking gets you killed, Santos said bluntly. In combat, 0.3 seconds is the difference between living and dying. We train the body to respond while the brain catches up. It's not about wanting to kill. It's about needing to survive. The prosecutor tried to shake her testimony, but this wasn't combat. This was a diplomatic station. Santos looked at her steadily. Ma'am, with respect, combat is anywhere you're in danger. Chen saw his principal struck by a hostile individual. His training did what it was supposed to do. It kept them both alive. Commander Vexthor is dead, the prosecutor said coldly. Yes, ma'am, Santos said. Because he initiated violence against someone protected by a trained soldier. That's not murder. That's natural consequences. The trial continued for 3 days. Expert after expert testified. Psychologists explained involuntary responses. Combat specialists demonstrated the difference between human and alien reaction speeds. They showed footage from Earth of actual threats, helping the court understand what shaped human evolution. But the turning point came on the 4th day, when Rodriguez dropped his bombshell. Your Honor, he said, the defense has uncovered new evidence regarding Commander Vexthor's history. We have documented 7 previous incidents where he used physical discipline against other species. 3 of those incidents resulted in permanent injury. 1 resulted in death. After they left, Marcus sat alone in his cell looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were watching him, judging him. Axis Prime was beautiful in a way that made Marcus uncomfortable. The capital world of the Galactic Concordat had been terraformed over thousands of years into a paradise of gentle hills, calm seas, and perfect weather. Nothing dangerous grew here. Nothing deadly hunted here. It was a world designed for civilized beings who had long ago conquered nature. Marcus hated it. The High Court building rose from the center of the capital city like a crystal mountain. Thousands of species had contributed to its construction, each adding their own architectural style. The result was stunning and chaotic, a monument to diversity and cooperation. Today, That monument would decide if humans belonged in that cooperation. The courtroom was massive, designed to accommodate hundreds of observers from dozens of species. Floating platforms held representatives from every major government. The gallery was packed with journalists, diplomats, and curiosity seekers. Cameras from every network in the galaxy focused on the central platform, where Marcus sat beside Ambassador Rodriguez and their legal team. Across from them sat the Tholian delegation, 17 officers in full military dress, their scales polished to mirror brightness. At their center sat Admiral Crescitor, Vexthor's commanding officer and closest friend. The Admiral's eyes never left Marcus, and the hatred in them was clear. The judge was a eldest, one of the ancient beings who had founded the Concordat 10,000 years ago. She looked like a column of living crystal, light pulsing through her in patterns that translated into speech through the court's systems. "This court is convened," the translation said, the voice somehow carrying weight and authority. "The Tholian Empire versus Marcus Chen of Earth. The charges are murder, assault on a diplomatic official, and endangering interspecies relations. How does the defendant plead?" Marcus stood, his voice steady. "Not guilty, Your Honor." A murmur ran through the gallery. The Tholian delegation hissed in anger. "Very well," the judge said. "Prosecution, present your case." The lead prosecutor was Avrelian, a species known for their legal expertise and cold logic. She activated a holographic display and the footage played again. Vexthor slapping Sarah, Marcus moving. "The strike, the fall, the death. The facts are simple," the prosecutor said. Commander Vexthor administered a minor disciplinary action, well within his cultural norms and rights as a senior official. The defendant responded with lethal force, killing the commander instantly. This was not self-defense. This was murder. She pulled up more images. Commander Vexthor was a decorated officer with 40 years of service. He had received the Star of Valor, the Campaign Medal, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He had saved lives, protected his people, and served with honor. And he was killed for a slap that would have left no permanent injury. The prosecutor turned to the gallery. "The defendant claims his training made him react instinctively. But training is a choice. Marcus Chen chose to become a soldier. He chose to learn how to kill. He chose to place himself in a situation where his deadly reflexes might be triggered. Every death caused by those reflexes is his responsibility." She sat down and the courtroom buzzed with discussion. Rodriguez stood, his formal robes catching the light. "Your Honor, the prosecution would have you believe this is simple. A man chose to kill, therefore he is guilty. But they ignore one crucial fact. Choice requires time. Conscious choice requires the ability to think, to consider, to decide. Marcus Chen had 0.3 seconds. That is not enough time for conscious thought. That is reflex, pure and simple. Rodriguez activated his own display. Images of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. The blue and green world looked peaceful from space, but the next images told a different story. Hurricanes that could level cities, earthquakes that could split continents, volcanic eruptions that darkened skies, predators with teeth and claws, diseases that killed millions. "This is Earth," Rodriguez said. "The most hostile inhabited world in known space. Gravity 30% higher than galactic standard. Weather systems that can kill in minutes. Megafauna that hunted our ancestors as prey. On Earth, you evolved to survive or you died. There was no third option." He pulled up comparative data. The average galactic species has a threat response time of 2 to 4 seconds. Humans average 0.5 seconds. Why? Because on Earth, hesitation meant death. Our ancestors who couldn't react fast enough were killed by predators, by rivals, by nature itself. We evolved speed because we had to. Rodriguez gestured to Marcus. This man was trained by Earth's military, among the most elite forces on our world. They took our natural reflexes and honed them further. They trained him to recognize threats and neutralize them instantly. Not because they wanted to create a monster, but because they needed to create a survivor. When Commander Vexthor struck Captain Okonkwo, Marcus's brain had 0.3 seconds to process the information. In that time, his training identified a threat pattern, an authority figure using physical violence against a smaller target. On Earth, that pattern often precedes lethal intent. His body responded according to its training, because 0.3 seconds is not enough time to consider cultural differences or diplomatic implications. The judge's light pulsed thoughtfully. The court recognizes the defense's argument, but we must ask, if humans are this dangerous, this reactive, do they belong in civilized space? It was the question Rodriguez had been waiting for. Your Honor, I'd like to call our first witness, Dr. Talmira, xenobiologist specializing in Deathworld evolution. A slender, bird-like alien took the stand. Her feathers were colored in shades of silver and blue, and her large eyes blinked slowly as she settled onto the witness platform. Dr. Talmira, Rodriguez said, you've studied Deathworld species for 70 years. Can you explain to the court what makes a Deathworld? Certainly, she said, her voice musical. A Deathworld is any planet where the mortality rate from environmental factors exceeds 30% before reproduction age. Earth exceeds 50%. It is quite literally the most hostile inhabited world we have ever discovered. And how does this affect evolution? Rodriguez asked. Species from Deathworlds develop extreme survival adaptations, she explained. Faster reflexes, stronger bodies, heightened aggression responses. These are not choices. These are evolutionary necessities. Humans, specifically, developed the most advanced threat assessment system we have studied. They can identify potential dangers in milliseconds and respond appropriately. Is this response always violent? Rodriguez asked. No, Dr. Talmira said. Humans have very sophisticated threat scaling. A small threat receives a small response. A medium threat receives a medium response. But when a human perceives a lethal threat, their response is equally lethal. This is not cruelty. This is survival logic. The prosecutor stood. But Commander Vexthor was not a lethal threat. He slapped someone. How is that lethal? Dr. Talmira's feathers ruffled. Context is everything. In Tholian culture, a slap is discipline. In human culture, physical violence from an authority figure often escalates to greater violence. Marcus Chen's brain, trained through 25 years of experience, recognized a pattern. Unprovoked assault by a larger, stronger individual. His response was calibrated to eliminate the threat before it could escalate. Rodriguez called his next witness, a human combat instructor named Sergeant Maria Santos. She was small, compact, with the kind of casual readiness that marked career soldiers. Sergeant Santos, Rodriguez said, you trained special forces for Earth's military. Can you explain what Marcus was taught? Yes, sir, she said crisply. We train for threat elimination. When you're in hostile territory, you don't get second chances. You see a threat, you end it, you move on. We drill it thousands of times until it becomes automatic. Why automatic? Rodriguez asked. Because thinking gets you killed, Santos said bluntly. In combat, 0.3 seconds is the difference between living and dying. We train the body to respond while the brain catches up. It's not about wanting to kill. It's about needing to survive. The prosecutor tried to shake her testimony, but this wasn't combat. This was a diplomatic station. Santos looked at her steadily. Ma'am, with respect, combat is anywhere you're in danger. Chen saw his principal struck by a hostile individual. His training did what it was supposed to do. It kept them both alive. Commander Vexthor is dead, the prosecutor said coldly. Yes, ma'am, Santos said. Because he initiated violence against someone protected by a trained soldier. That's not murder. That's natural consequences. The trial continued for 3 days. Expert after expert testified. Psychologists explained involuntary responses. Combat specialists demonstrated the difference between human and alien reaction speeds. They showed footage from Earth of actual threats, helping the court understand what shaped human evolution. But the turning point came on the 4th day, when Rodriguez dropped his bombshell. Your Honor, he said, the defense has uncovered new evidence regarding Commander Vexthor's history. We have documented 7 previous incidents where he used physical discipline against other species. 3 of those incidents resulted in permanent injury. 1 resulted in death. The courtroom exploded. The Tholian delegation erupted in protests. Admiral Kreshtorsto. The 24-hour recess felt like 24 years. Marcus spent the time in his assigned quarters, unable to sleep, unable to think about anything except the evidence Rodriguez had presented. Vexthor's victims, 7 of them, 3 permanently injured, 1 dead. Sarah visited him that evening, bringing food he couldn't eat and company he desperately needed. They found the victims, she said, settling into the chair across from him. Rodriguez's team tracked them down. They're willing to testify. Marcus looked up. Testify to what? To what Vexthor did to them, Sarah said. She pulled up her data pad, her expression grim. The first one was 20 years ago. A Palaean cargo handler on a Tholian military station. Vexthor accused him of disrespect, broke 3 of his limbs with a disciplinary strike. The Pelian couldn't work for 2 years, she scrolled through the files. The second was 15 years ago. A Quellan scientist who questioned Vexthor's orders. He slapped her hard enough to damage her hearing permanently. The third, fourth, and fifth were all within the last decade. Minor injuries, but traumatic. And then, Sarah's voice dropped. 6 years ago, a Drellian intern on his flagship. Young, barely out of school, trying to make a career in Galactic service. She spilled a drink near Vexthor during a formal dinner. He struck her across the face. She fell, hit her head on a table edge. Died 3 days later from brain trauma. Marcus felt sick. And he was never charged? The Thalian Empire covered it up, Sarah said. Classified it as an accident. Paid the family a settlement. Reassigned Vexthor to a different command. He kept his rank, kept his medals, kept his reputation. So I killed a murderer, Marcus said quietly. You killed an abuser who thought he was untouchable, Sarah corrected. And now the galaxy knows it. The news had spread like wildfire. The evidence Rodriguez presented was public record now, shared across every network. The Tholian Empire's attempts to suppress it only made it spread faster. People were angry, not just at Vexthor, but at the system that protected him. Species that had suffered under Tholian arrogance for generations were speaking up. Testimonies flooded in from across the galaxy. Stories of Tholian officers abusing their power, using discipline as an excuse for violence against those too weak to fight back. The Tholian government was in crisis. Half the Empire supported the Old Guard, claiming the accusations were lies designed to destroy their reputation. The other half, younger Tholians who had grown tired of the old ways, demanded reform. When court reconvened the next day, the atmosphere had changed completely. The Tholian delegation was smaller, missing several members who had returned home to deal with the political firestorm. Admiral Kreshtor looked older, his scales dull. The judge's light was steady and bright. This court has reviewed all evidence presented. Before rendering judgment, we will hear testimony from Commander Vexthor's victims. One by one, they took the stand. The Pelian cargo handler, now middle-aged, walking with a permanent limp. The Quellan scientist speaking too loudly because her damaged hearing required amplification. The others each with their story of pain and injustice. The last to testify was the mother of the Drellian intern. She was small, her skin pale blue, her eyes ancient with grief. My daughter was 23, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She loved the stars. She wanted to serve, to make a difference. She died because she spilled a drink. The courtroom was silent. Even the Tholian delegation looked uncomfortable. Commander Vexthor never apologized, the mother continued. Never acknowledged what he did. The Empire paid us credits as if money could replace my child. They told us it was an accident, that these things happen. They told us to move on. She looked directly at Admiral Kreshtor. You knew. All of you knew what he was, and you protected him because he was one of yours. The Admiral said nothing. What could he say? The prosecutor stood slowly. Your Honor, the prosecution acknowledges these testimonies are troubling, but they do not change the fundamental fact. Marcus Chen killed a man. Whether that man was honorable or not, whether he deserved death or not, the law must be upheld. Which law? Rodriguez asked, standing to face her. Tholian law that protected an abuser? Concordat law that allowed it to happen? Or the law that says every being has the right to defend themselves and others from violence? He turned to the judge. Your Honor, this trial has revealed something important. The galaxy operates on assumptions that do not account for Deathworld species. We assume everyone processes threats at the same speed. We assume everyone has the same capacity for violence. We assume everyone shares the same cultural understanding of what constitutes a threat. But these assumptions are wrong. Marcus Chen is not broken. He is not a criminal. He is simply from Earth, and Earth plays by different rules because it has to. If the galaxy cannot accommodate that reality, then the galaxy has a problem. Rodriguez activated a new display. The defense proposes a new framework. We call it the Deathworlder Doctrine. The hologram showed a detailed legal document, the product of dozens of lawyers and scholars working around the clock. The core principle is simple, Rodriguez explained. Species from hostile worlds have different threat responses because they evolved in different circumstances. These responses are not choices. They are biological imperatives. The Deathworlder doctrine recognizes this reality and provides legal framework to accommodate it. He outlined the main points. Acknowledgement that Deathworld species had faster reflexes and stronger responses. Mandatory education about Deathworld psychology for all citizens. Legal recognition that physical contact without consent with a trained combatant from a Deathworld constitutes acceptance of risk. Enhanced rights for Deathworld species to act in self-defense or defense of others. This is not about giving humans special privileges, Rodriguez said. It is about recognizing that we are different and that difference must be respected. Just as we respect that Tholians need warmer temperatures or that Vrexians need lower gravity, we must respect that humans need to feel safe from physical threats. The prosecutor shook her head. You are asking us to excuse violence because of biology. Where does it end? Should we excuse theft because a species evolved as scavengers? Should we excuse aggression because a species evolved as predators? No, Rodriguez said firmly. We are not asking for blanket immunity. We are asking for understanding. Marcus Chen did not hunt Commander Vexthor. He did not ambush him. He reacted to an immediate threat with trained reflexes. There is a difference between justified response and unjustified aggression. A voice spoke from the gallery. I would like to address the court. Everyone turned. A Tholian officer stood, young by their standards, maybe 40 years old. His scales were bright green, marking him as a junior rank. I am Commander Relton of the Tholian Second Fleet, he said. I served under Vexthor for 5 years. I witnessed his behavior. I reported it to my superiors 3 times. Each time I was told to ignore it, that this was how senior officers maintained discipline. He stepped down from the gallery, approaching the main floor. I am here to say that the Tholian Empire was wrong. We protected Vexthor because he was a hero, because admitting his crimes would shame us, but greater shame comes from letting injustice stand. Admiral Crescitor stood, his voice a hiss. You betray your own people, Relton. You shame your uniform. I honor my uniform, Relton said calmly, by telling the truth. Vexthor was not a hero. He was a bully, and Marcus Chen did what none of us had the courage to do. He stopped him. Other voices rose from the gallery. More Tholians, some supporting Relton, others condemning him. The courtroom descended into chaos. The judge's light flared bright enough to hurt. Order! The translated voice boomed through the chamber. This court will have order. The noise subsided slowly. The judge's light pulsed in complex patterns, processing everything that had happened. This court recognizes that this case has become larger than one incident, the judge said. It has revealed systemic issues that must be addressed. The Concordat will establish a commission to study Deathworld integration and develop appropriate legal frameworks. She focused on Marcus. However, we must still rule on the case before us. Marcus Chen, you have been charged with murder. The evidence shows that you killed Commander Vexthor in defense of another person. The evidence also shows that Vexthor had a history of violence that justified your threat assessment. The courtroom held its breath. This court finds you not guilty of murder, the judge said. Your actions, while lethal, were justified under the doctrine of defense of others. However, this court also recognizes the need for accountability. You will serve 6 months of community service, teaching Galactic citizens about human psychology and threat response. You will help develop the educational programs necessary to prevent future misunderstandings. Marcus felt his knees weaken. Not guilty. He was free. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court formally adopts the Deathworlder doctrine as provisional law, pending full Concordat ratification. All member species are required to educate their citizens on Deathworld psychology within 1 standard year. The judge's light dimmed slightly. This case has shown us that civilization is not the absence of violence. It is the proper understanding of when violence is justified. Marcus Chen, you are free to go. The courtroom erupted. 3 months after the trial, Marcus stood in front of 200 Galactic citizens in a lecture hall on Station Unity. The station had been renamed after the verdict, a symbol of the new understanding between species. His community service had brought him here, teaching classes on human psychology to anyone who wanted to learn. Today's class was full. 3 dozen different species filled the seats, some curious, some fearful, all wanting to understand the creatures from Earth. Threat assessment, Marcus said, his voice carrying through the hall, is not something humans think about. It is something we feel. From the moment we are born, we are taught to recognize danger, A raised voice. A sudden movement. A stranger standing too close. These are patterns, and our brains are hardwired to react to them. He pulled up a hologram of Earth, rotating slowly. This is why. Earth does not forgive mistakes. If you do not recognize a threat fast enough, you die. Your genes do not pass on. Over millions of years, the humans who survived were the ones who reacted first and asked questions later. A Quellan in the front row raised a delicate hand. But surely you can control these instincts. Surely you can choose not to react. Yes and no, Marcus said. We can suppress the reaction if we have time to think. But time is the key word. If someone surprises me, if they move aggressively, my body will respond before my brain finishes processing what is happening. That is 0.3 seconds. That is how fast instinct works. He played footage from his training days, speeded up so the alien students could see the difference. Human soldiers reacting to threats in fractions of a second. Aliens taking 2, 3, 4 times as long. This does not make us better, Marcus said. It makes us different. Your species evolved to think before acting. That is a gift. You build civilizations based on careful thought and planning. Humans evolved to act before thinking. That is also a gift. We survive situations that would kill others. A young Tholian in the back stood up. Marcus recognized him as one of Commander Relton's aides. You killed one of ours, the Tholian said, not quite accusing. How do we trust you? Marcus had answered this question 100 times in the past months. It never got easier. You trust me the same way I trust you, he said, by understanding that I do not want to hurt anyone. My reflexes exist to protect, not to attack. If you do not threaten me or those I am protecting, you are safe. But if you do threaten someone, my body will respond. That is not a choice. That is biology. The Tholian sat down slowly, thinking about this. After class, Marcus walked through the station corridors, heading to his meeting with Captain Okonkwo. She had turned the disaster of their trade mission into something remarkable. Her company now specialized in human-alien cultural consulting, teaching businesses how to work safely with Deathworld species. You are getting good at this, Sarah said when he arrived at her office. The bruise on her face had healed months ago, but she still touched it sometimes, remembering. The reviews from your students are excellent. They are scared, Marcus said, sitting down. But they want to understand. That is progress. Sarah pulled up recent news feeds. The Deathworlder doctrine had been fully ratified 2 weeks ago. Every member species of the Concordat was now required to provide education about Deathworld psychology. Contact protocols had been established. Warning signs were posted in areas where Deathworld species worked, but more importantly, other changes were happening. The Tholian Empire had undergone a revolution. The old guard, embarrassed by the revelations about Vexthor, had been forced out of power. Commander Relton, now promoted to Admiral, led the reform movement. They were investigating decades of abuse, bringing charges against officers who had used their power to hurt others. 17 species had filed formal complaints about Tholian behavior over the centuries. The Empire was paying reparations, issuing apologies, fundamentally restructuring their military culture. Vexthor's death did that, Sarah said quietly. One moment of violence and an entire empire changed. I am not sure that is something to be proud of, Marcus said. Maybe not proud, Sarah agreed, but grateful. How many more people would Vexthor have hurt if you had not stopped him? Marcus did not have an answer for that. The door chimed. Ambassador Rodriguez entered, looking more relaxed than Marcus had ever seen him. The trial had been exhausting for everyone, but especially for the ambassador who had carried the weight of humanity's reputation. I have news, Rodriguez said, settling into a chair. The Concordat is establishing a new bureau, the Deathworld Affairs Department. They want someone to head it, someone who understands both the challenges and the opportunities of integrating Deathworld species. He looked at Marcus. They want you, Marcus blinked. Me? I am not a diplomat. I am a soldier. You are a teacher now, Rodriguez said, and you are the face of Deathworld understanding. The galaxy knows you. They trust you, or at least they are learning to. You could make a real difference. What would I do? Marcus asked. Develop protocols. Train specialists. Advise governments on Deathworld integration. Help other species from hostile worlds find their place in galactic society. Rodriguez leaned forward. There are 11 other known Deathworlds with intelligent species. Only 3 are part of the Concordat. The others are isolated, considered too dangerous. You could change that. Marcus thought about it. A year ago he had been a simple mercenary, doing security work to pay bills. Then 6 seconds changed everything. Now he was being offered a chance to shape galactic policy. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," Rodriguez said. "But think quickly. The galaxy is watching, and humans need to show we are more than just fast reflexes and violence. We need to show we can build, not just break." After the ambassador left, Sarah and Marcus sat in comfortable silence. Through the window, ships came and went from the station, a dance of commerce and diplomacy that had been happening for thousands of years. Humans were part of that dance now, no longer outsiders looking in. "Are you going to take it?" Sarah asked. "I do not know," Marcus said honestly. "Part of me wants to go back to Earth to find a quiet place and forget this all happened. But another part knows you cannot," Sarah finished, "because you started something. You showed the galaxy what humans can be, not just dangerous but protective, not just violent but justified. If you walk away now, that message is incomplete." She was right, and Marcus knew it. The footage of those 6 seconds would be shown in schools for generations. The human who killed in defense of another, the Deathworlder who proved that violence could be righteous. If he walked away, that is all it would be. A cautionary tale. But if he stayed, if he helped build the frameworks for understanding, maybe it could be something more. "I will take the job," Marcus said, "but I have conditions. I want other Deathworlders on my team. I want people from different worlds, different perspectives. This cannot be just about humans." Sarah smiled. "I will make some calls. I know a Graxian from a heavy gravity world who would be perfect. And there is a Kresh from a desert death world who has been trying to join the Concordat for years." Over the next months, Marcus built his team. The Deathworld Affairs Department started small, just 7 people from 5 different species, but they had a mission. They visited isolated worlds, making contact with species that had been rejected as too dangerous. They developed training programs, cultural exchange initiatives, safety protocols. Slowly, the galaxy opened up. The Concordat accepted 2 new Deathworld species within the first year. Human security specialists became sought after, not feared. The warning signs came down, replaced by understanding. Marcus returned to Harmony's gate station a year after the incident. The station had been fully repaired, and a memorial had been added. But it was not a memorial to Vexthor. It was a memorial to his victims, all 7 of them, their names and faces preserved forever. Marcus stood before it, reading each name. The Pelian cargo handler, the Quellan scientist, the young Drellian intern, the others whose suffering had been hidden for so long. "We remember," the memorial read, "not to celebrate violence, but to honor those who suffered in silence. May their pain teach us to be better." A shadow fell across the memorial. Marcus turned to find Admiral Relton standing beside him. The Tholian looked older now, carrying the weight of his empire's reformation. "Thank you," the Admiral said simply. "For what?" Marcus asked. "For stopping him. For exposing the truth. For giving us the chance to be better." Relton's scales shifted in a pattern Marcus had learned meant sadness. "I should have stopped him years ago. I had the power. I lacked the courage." "You found it eventually," Marcus said. "That is what matters." They stood together in silence, 2 former enemies united by a shared understanding of what justice required. Marcus's communicator chimed. A message from Earth. His sister checking in like she did every week. His mother sending pictures of his nephew. Normal life, continuing while he shaped galactic policy. He responded quickly, promising to visit soon. Earth was his home, would always be his home, but the galaxy was his responsibility now. 6 seconds had changed everything, not just for him, not just for humanity, but for every species that had felt powerless against abuse. Those 6 seconds had proven that sometimes violence was the answer, not because it was glorious, but because it was necessary. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the cold metal room. His hands were locked in chains that glowed with blue light. The chains were made from alien metal that could not be broken by human strength. Around him, strange creatures sat in tall chairs that formed a circle. These were the members of the Galactic Council, the rulers of thousands of worlds across the galaxy. The room was huge and dark. Only bright lights shining down on Jake lit up the space where he stood. The alien judges looked down at him like he was some small insect they had found crawling on their floor. Jake had been their guest for 3 years. He had come to this station in peace, trying to make friends between Earth and the galaxy. Now they treated him like a criminal. Jake looked up at the creatures who would decide if he lived or died. Meow. Fourth Act Chancellor was made of living crystal that changed colors when it spoke. Its voice sounded like breaking glass when it came through the translator device. Next to it sat a being of pure light called a luminari. It had no solid body, just glowing energy that hurt to look at directly. There were others too. The Cathari looked like giant spiders with too many eyes. The Morgani had skin like tree bark and breathed poisonous gas. The Zephyrians floated in the air, their bodies like jellyfish made of metal. All of them stared at Jake with cold eyes that showed no kindness. Chancellor Zexhi's crystal body flashed red as it spoke. Human Jake Morrison, you stand accused of crimes against the sacred preservation laws. You have smuggled forbidden technology. You have shared dangerous knowledge with lesser species. You have broken the ancient rules that keep peace in our galaxy. Jake shook his head. These charges are lies. I never smuggled anything. I never broke any laws. I came here to build friendship between our peoples. Everything I did was legal and open. The luminary judge, called High Arbiter Velnam, pulsed with angry light. The evidence is clear, human. We found the banned quantum processors in your quarters. We have recordings of you teaching weapon designs to the Rillan rebels. You cannot deny what we have seen with our own sensors. Those items were planted there, Jake said loudly. Someone put them in my room to frame me. The recordings are fake. I never met with any rebels. I have spent 3 years trying to help Earth join your community in peace. Jake's heart was beating fast. He knew he was innocent, but he also knew the truth did not matter here. The council had decided to kill him before this trial even started. They wanted him dead, and they would find any excuse to make it happen. The Crystal Chancellor made a sound like wind through broken glass. The human speaks lies even now. His kind cannot be trusted. They are too violent, too unpredictable. They multiply too quickly and want too much. They are a danger to the order we have built over millions of years. Other council members nodded their strange heads or flashed agreement with lights and colors. Jake realized this was not really about the charges. This was about fear. The aliens were afraid of humans. They were afraid of what Earth might become if humans were allowed to grow and learn and spread across the galaxy. You fear us because we are different, Jake said. You fear us because we do not think like you. But being different does not make us evil. Give us a chance to prove we can live in peace with you. The Cathari judge clicked its mandibles together, and what Jake had learned was alien laughter. Peace? Your species fights wars on your own world. You kill your own kind for land and resources and ideas. What peace could you bring to the galaxy? We are learning to be better, Jake replied. Yes, we have fought wars. Yes, we have made mistakes, but we are trying to grow beyond that. Every intelligent species has a dark past, even yours. The mention of their own violent histories made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Jake saw he had touched something they did not want to remember. High Arbiter Velnam's light turned cold white. Enough talk. The evidence is clear. The punishment for these crimes is molecular dissolution. The sentence will be carried out immediately. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. Molecular dissolution meant they would tear apart every atom in his body. It was the worst death the aliens could give, reserved for the most terrible criminals. And they were going to do it to him for crimes he never committed. Wait, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. I have the right to appeal. I have the right to contact my government. The treaties you signed with Earth guarantee these rights. Chancellor Zexhi's crystals flashed with dark colors. Those treaties are void. Earth is no longer welcome in this community. Your death will serve as a message to your kind. Stay in your small corner of space or face the same fate. Jake understood now. This was not about justice. This was about sending a message to Earth. They were going to kill him to show humans what happened when they tried to join the Galactic community. They wanted to scare Earth into staying isolated and weak. The execution chamber began to power up. Jake could hear the humming of massive machines somewhere below the floor. Energy weapons were charging, preparing to tear him apart atom by atom. He had minutes left to live. Jake activated his emergency communicator, the one device they had, not taken from him. It was disguised as a simple medical monitor, but it could send messages across space faster than light. His final transmission would reach Earth before his death. "This is Ambassador Jake Morrison." He spoke into the tiny device. "The Galactic Council has decided to execute me on false charges. They want to use my death to frighten Earth into submission. Tell President Carter what they have done here. Tell her that the galaxy has shown its true face. Tell them humanity remembers." The execution beam activated. Jake Morrison, Earth's first ambassador to the stars, died screaming as his body dissolved into nothing. His death was recorded and broadcast to every human colony and station, witnessed by billions who had hoped for peace among the stars. The galaxy had made its choice. Now, Earth would make theirs. President Lisa Carter sat in the White House Situation Room, watching Jake Morrison die for the third time. The video played on every screen around the table. Government leaders, military officers, and scientists all watched in silence as their ambassador dissolved into nothing. The aliens had broadcast his execution across the entire galaxy to send a message to Earth. General Ryan Phillips slammed his fist on the table. They murdered him in cold blood. Jake was a good man who only wanted peace. He never committed those crimes they accused him of. Admiral Kate Sullivan nodded her agreement. "Our intelligence confirms the charges were fake. Someone planted that equipment in his quarters. The recordings of him meeting with rebels were created using computer programs. This was a setup from the beginning." Dr. Elena Rodriguez opened her tablet and showed the room dozens of documents. She was the head of Earth's Alien Relations Department and had worked closely with Jake for years. "I have proof that Jake was framed. The quantum processors they found were Vorthak technology, but Jake never had access to Vorthak areas of the station. The weapon designs they claim he shared do not match any human technology. Someone wanted him dead and created evidence to justify it." President Carter rubbed her tired eyes. She had not slept since getting the news 12 hours ago. Outside, the White House, angry crowds were gathering. People across Earth and all the human colonies were demanding revenge for Jake's murder. Why would they do this? Jake was helping them understand us. He was building bridges between our species. Agent Carlos Bennett spoke up from his seat at the far end of the table. He was Earth's top spy, and his job was to watch the aliens and learn their secrets. "Because they are afraid of us, Madam President. My sources in the alien community tell me several council species have been meeting in secret for months. They call it the human problem. They think we breed too fast, learn too quickly, and adapt too well. They believe humans will eventually take over the galaxy if they do not stop us now." The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed this information. Earth had tried so hard to be friendly with the aliens. Humans had shared their art, their music, their culture. They had followed every rule and obeyed every law the Council made, and still the aliens saw them as a threat that needed to be destroyed. Defense. Secretary Bill Cooper spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "We always knew this day might come. That is why we created Project Reckoning 20 years ago. We hoped we would never need it, but we prepared anyway." President Carter looked at him with surprise. "Project Reckoning? I have never heard of this." General Phillips stood up and walked to a secure computer terminal. He typed in several passwords and pressed his palm against a scanner. The lights in the room dimmed as classified information appeared on the main screen. Project Reckoning began after our first contact with aliens 30 years ago, Phillips explained. Some of us worried that the aliens might not be as friendly as they seemed. We started a secret program to study alien technology and biology. We wanted to know how to fight them if we ever had to. Images flashed on the screen showing hidden bases, secret laboratories, and construction sites scattered throughout the solar system. Admiral Sullivan gasped as she saw the scale of what had been built without her knowledge. "We have been building weapons designed specifically to kill aliens," Phillips continued. "We studied every species that contacted us. We learned their weaknesses, their fears, their biology. We created viruses that only affect alien DNA. We built ships that can counter their technology. We prepared for war while hoping for peace. Doctor, Rodriguez stared at the screen in shock. How many people know about this? Less than 100, Phillips replied. Scientists, engineers, military officers, all sworn to secrecy. We called them the Reckoning Division. They have been working in hidden facilities for decades, preparing for the day the aliens showed their true nature. President Carter felt sick to her stomach. Part of her was horrified that such preparations had been made in secret, but another part of her was grateful that someone had the foresight to prepare for this possibility. Show me what we have, she ordered. For the next hour, General Phillips and his team presented the full scope of Project Reckoning. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt had built over 200 warships using improved alien technology. Secret. Laboratories had created biological weapons tailored to each alien species. Underground bases housed millions of soldiers trained specifically for fighting aliens. Dr. Miranda Foster, head of the Biological Warfare Division, explained her work. We collected DNA samples from every alien diplomat who visited Earth. We studied their immune systems, their cellular structure, their nervous systems. We created targeted plagues that will kill them while leaving humans completely unharmed. Captain Tony Mitchell showed them videos of the new warships. We took alien technology and made it better. Our ships are faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than anything the Council has. We learned from every piece of alien equipment they shared with us and turned that knowledge into weapons. The presentations continued as more and more of Project Reckoning was revealed. Earth had an entire shadow military that the aliens knew nothing about. While Jake Morrison was trying to build peace on one level, other humans were preparing for total war on another. President Carter looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. Some looked eager for revenge. Others looked scared of what they might have to do. All of them looked to her for leadership in humanity's darkest hour. The aliens have made their position clear, she said finally. They see us as a threat that must be eliminated. Jake's execution was just the beginning. They will not stop until every human is dead or enslaved. She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the White House lawn. Protesters filled the street beyond the gates, holding signs demanding justice for Jake Morrison. The crowds had been growing all day as news of the execution spread. The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity, President Carter announced. They killed our ambassador and broadcast his murder to terrorize us into submission. They think we will cower in fear and accept their judgment. She turned back to face the room. Her voice was cold and steady when she spoke again. They are wrong. Earth does not kneel to anyone. If they want a war, they will get one. But it will not be the war they expect. We will not fight by their rules or show them the mercy they denied Jake Morrison. General Phillips stepped forward. What are your orders, Madam President? Lisa Carter looked at each person in the room one final time. She thought about Jake Morrison, who had died believing in peace between species. She thought about the billions of humans across the galaxy who were now in danger. She thought about the future of humanity itself. Activate the extermination protocol, she ordered. Show the galaxy what happens when you murder our ambassadors. The room erupted in activity as orders were sent to secret bases across the solar system. Earth's hidden war machine began to move. The aliens had started this fight by killing one man. Now they would learn the price of threatening humanity's survival. The war for the galaxy had begun. Colonel Steve Murphy floated in zero gravity inside the hidden asteroid base called Titan Station. Around him, thousands of workers moved like busy ants as they prepared humanity's secret war fleet for launch. The base had been carved out of a large asteroid 20 years ago, hidden so deep in the asteroid belt that no alien scanner could find it. Murphy watched as the massive doors of the main hangar slowly opened. Inside, rows of human warships waited in the darkness. These were not the small research vessels and cargo ships the aliens had seen before. These were weapons of war, built using alien technology that humans had stolen, studied, and improved over decades of secret work. The largest ship was the UES Vengeance, a heavy battle cruiser that stretched over 2 kilometers from front to back. Its hull was covered in armor made from materials that did not exist in nature. Human scientists had created the metal by combining alien alloys with Earth minerals in ways that no other species had ever tried. Captain Tony Mitchell walked across the bridge of the Vengeance, checking every system one final time. His crew of 300 men and women had trained for this day their entire adult lives. They had studied alien tactics, learned alien languages, and memorized the weak points of every alien ship design. "All systems show green," reported Lieutenant Amy Davis from her position at the weapons console. "The plasma cannons are charged and ready. The missile tubes are loaded with our special warheads." The special warheads were Dr. Miranda Foster's creation. Each missile contained millions of microscopic machines called nanobots. When the missiles hit alien ships, the nanobots would eat through alien metal like acid while leaving human materials, completely untouched. The aliens had never seen anything like these weapons. In another part of Titan Station, Dr. Foster stood in her laboratory, watching her greatest creation being loaded into delivery systems. The biological weapon she had created looked like ordinary water, but it contained engineered viruses that would target specific alien DNA patterns. "The Vorthax strain is ready for deployment," she told her assistant, Dr. Ken Harris. "It will attack their crystalline cellular structure and cause them to literally fall apart at the molecular level. The luminary strain will disrupt their energy matrices and cause their bodies to collapse into basic photons. Each alien species that had joined in Jake Morrison's murder would face their own specially designed plague. The Ketheri would find their exoskeletons dissolving. The Morgani would watch their bark-like skin crack and bleed. The Zephyrians would see their metal flesh rust and corrode." Foster had spent 15 years studying alien biology, learning how each species lived and breathed and reproduced. Now she was using that knowledge to destroy them all. She felt no guilt about this work. The aliens had started this war when they murdered an innocent human ambassador. Back on the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Mitchell received a coded message from Earth. President Carter had given the final order. Operation Payback was now active. Humanity's secret fleet would strike the aliens in one coordinated attack that would cripple their ability to fight back. "All ships, this is Vengeance Actual," Mitchell spoke into his communication system. "You have your orders. We launch in 30 minutes. Remember what they did to Ambassador Morrison. Remember that they want to wipe out every human man, woman, and child in the galaxy. Today we show them the price of threatening humanity." Similar messages were being sent from dozens of other hidden bases throughout the solar system. Behind the moons of Jupiter, a fleet of stealth ships prepared to attack alien supply lines. In the rings of Saturn, missile platforms powered up their weapons. Near Pluto, massive railguns aimed at distant alien worlds began charging their magnetic coils. The aliens had no idea what was coming. For 30 years, they had watched humanity with their sensors and spies. They saw only small ships, peaceful settlements, and primitive weapons. They never suspected that humans were masters of deception and misdirection. While Jake Morrison was shaking hands with alien diplomats, human engineers were reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. While human scientists were sharing medical knowledge with alien doctors, other human scientists were creating diseases that would kill those same aliens. The human colony ships that had spread across nearby star systems were not just carrying families and farmers. Hidden in their cargo holds were weapons, soldiers, and the components needed to build military bases. What the aliens thought was peaceful expansion was actually humanity preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Commander Lisa Park sat in the command center of a hidden base built inside the moon. Her job was to coordinate the attacks on alien communication networks. Human hackers had spent years learning alien computer systems, finding ways to break into their networks and steal their secrets. "We have access to the Galactic Council's main communication hub," reported technician Dan Miller. "We can shut down their ability to send messages between worlds whenever you give the order." Park nodded grimly. "Wait for the signal from the fleet. We want their ships to start dying before they realize they cannot call for help." The first target was Kepler Station, the same place where Jake Morrison had been murdered. The aliens had chosen that location to show humanity their place in the galaxy. Now humans would use it to send their own message. Kepler Station was home to over 50,000 aliens from a dozen different species. It was the diplomatic center of their civilization, where treaties were signed and trade agreements were made. The aliens felt completely safe there, protected by their most advanced defense systems. They did not know that human spies had been mapping those defenses for 3 years. Agent Carlos Bennett had used his diplomatic cover to plant listening devices throughout the station. Other human agents had bribed alien criminals to provide detailed maps of the station's layout. The Vengeance and her escort ships approached Kepler Station using a route that avoided all the alien sensor nets. Human technology had progressed far beyond what the aliens suspected. The same species that seemed so primitive was about to demonstrate why humanity had conquered their own world through superior warfare. Captain Mitchell watched the alien station grow larger on his main screen. In a few minutes he would open, fire on a target full of civilians. Part of him felt sick about what he was about to do. But then he remembered Jake Morrison dissolving into atoms while alien judges watched without emotion. "All weapons, target the station's power core," Mitchell ordered. "We end this quickly." The first human missiles struck Kepler Station's shields and tore through them like they were made of paper. The aliens had designed their defenses to stop known weapons using known technology. They never prepared for weapons that attacked on the quantum level, unraveling the very atoms that held their shields together. Explosions rippled across the station's hull as human weapons found their targets. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the facility as thousands of aliens realized they were under attack. But their calls for help would never be answered. Commander Park had cut their communication lines at the exact moment the shooting started. Within 20 minutes, Kepler Station was a burning wreck drifting in space. The diplomatic center of galactic civilization had been destroyed by the same species the aliens thought they could intimidate into submission. But this was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, human ships were emerging from hiding places the aliens never knew existed. The species that had seemed so peaceful and harmless was revealing their true nature as the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. The aliens had executed one human ambassador to send a message. Now they would learn what message humanity was sending back. The first alien response came 12 hours after Kepler Station died. A fleet of 60 Vorthak crystal ships appeared near Jupiter, their hulls glowing with angry red light. The crystal beings had ruled their part of the galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. They had never lost a battle against any enemy. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched them approach from her command ship, the UES Retribution. The alien vessels looked beautiful and deadly, like living gemstones that could destroy planets. But Sullivan knew something the Vorthak did not. Human scientists had discovered that their crystal bodies had a fatal weakness. "All ships, activate the harmonic weapons," Sullivan ordered. "Target frequency 7.4. The human fleet began broadcasting a specific sound wave that human ears could not hear. But to the Vorthak, it was the sound of death itself. Their crystal bodies were like giant tuning forks. When the right frequency hit them, they began to vibrate and crack. Inside the alien ships, Vorthak warriors screamed as their bodies started falling apart. Their crystal forms, which had seemed so strong and beautiful, shattered like glass hit by a hammer. Within minutes, 60 enemy ships became clouds of glittering dust floating in space. The Vorthak home fleet never made it past Mars. Not a single human ship was damaged in the battle. Earth's children had turned the aliens' greatest strength into their weakest point. On the other side of the galaxy, Major Alex Turner led human ground forces onto the luminary world of Veltar. The luminary were beings of pure energy who lived in cities made of light itself. They thought their energy forms made them immune to physical weapons. They were wrong. Turner's soldiers carried weapons that fired concentrated electromagnetic pulses. When the energy beams hit luminary bodies, the light beings began to flicker and fade like dying candles. Their energy matrices, which had held together for thousands of years, collapsed into random photons. "Target the power nodes," Turner shouted to his troops as they advanced through a city that looked like it was built from rainbows. "Cut off their energy supply and they die." The human soldiers moved through the alien city like death itself. Everything they touched with their special weapons turned dark and cold. The Luminari, who had once been masters of light and energy, found themselves powerless against human technology designed specifically to kill them. Back on Earth, Dr. Miranda Foster watched reports of her biological weapons spreading across alien worlds. The plagues she had created were working exactly as planned. Each disease targeted specific alien DNA while leaving every other form of life completely unharmed. On the Cathari spider world, millions of the 8-legged aliens were dying as their exoskeletons dissolved. Their bodies, which had been like natural armor, became soft and helpless. The spiders who had terrorized other species for centuries were reduced to helpless creatures that could barely move. The Morgani tree people watched in horror as their bark-like skin began to crack and bleed. The poison gas they breathed became toxic to their own bodies. Ancient Morgani who had lived for thousands of years died in agony as Foster's engineered virus ate them from the inside. Foster felt no pity as she watched the death reports come in. These same aliens had cheered when Jake Morrison was murdered. They had voted to execute an innocent human diplomat who only wanted peace. Now they were learning what humans did to enemies who killed their ambassadors. The Seraphim Collective, the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy, finally tried to negotiate. Their representative, a being that looked like a walking crystal statue covered in golden light, appeared on Earth's communication channels. "We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict," the Seraphim ambassador said. "Surely we can find a peaceful solution to this misunderstanding." Ambassador Nicole Brooks, who had worked with Jake Morrison for years, gave humanity's reply. Her voice was cold and hard as steel when she spoke to the alien. "You executed our representative without cause. You declared war on our entire species. You broadcast his murder to terrorize us into submission. There is no misunderstanding here. There is only the consequences of your actions." The Seraphim ambassador's golden glow flickered with what might have been fear. "But surely you do not intend to destroy entire civilizations over the death of one individual?" Brooks smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Jake Morrison was not just one individual. He was our voice among the stars. He was our hope for peace between our peoples. You killed that hope when you killed him. Now you face the result. The communication ended. The Seraphim Collective, for all their ancient wisdom and advanced technology, had no answer for humanity's calculated fury. They had never faced an enemy that fought with such cold determination. Human fleets were now operating in every corner of the galaxy. Captain Tony Mitchell's task force had destroyed 3 major alien shipyards. Commander Lisa Park's hackers had crashed the computer networks of entire star systems. Major Turner's ground forces were conquering alien worlds that had not seen warfare in thousands of years. The aliens tried to fight back, but they were fighting the last war instead of this one. They used tactics that had worked against other aliens, enemies who fought for territory or resources or honor. They did not understand how to fight humans who were motivated by pure revenge. Every alien species had grown soft during the long peace between the stars. They had forgotten how to wage total war. Humans had never forgotten. Earth's children carried the memories of every battle their ancestors had fought, every enemy they had destroyed, every victory they had won through superior violence. On the former Council world of Nexus Prime, human ships dropped Foster's biological weapons like rain from the sky. The planet that had once been home to the Galactic Council's bureaucracy became a graveyard where no alien could survive. The survivors sent desperate messages across space, begging for help that would never come. The communication networks that had once connected the galaxy were now controlled by human hackers. No alien world could talk to another without human permission. Defense Secretary Bill Cooper stood in the Pentagon War Room, watching red lights disappear from the galactic map, one by one. Each light represented an alien world that had gone silent. Some were dead, killed by human weapons or plagues. Others had surrendered and were waiting to learn their fate. "How many are left?" President Carter asked as she entered the room. Cooper looked at the map and counted the remaining lights. "Maybe 24 worlds out of the original 300 in the Council. Most of those are cut off from each other and running out of supplies. The war is effectively over." Carter nodded grimly. 6 months ago, The aliens had thought they could intimidate humanity by murdering one ambassador. They had seen humans as a minor threat that could be eliminated with a simple execution. They had been wrong about everything. Humans were not the peaceful farmers and scientists the aliens had observed. They were predators who had evolved through millions of years, warfare on a world that tried to kill them every day. They were survivors who had conquered their own planet through superior violence and cunning. The aliens had awakened something they did not understand. They had poked a sleeping dragon and then wondered why their worlds were burning. Jake Morrison's death had been meant to send a message to humanity about their place in the Galactic Order. Instead, it had triggered the complete destruction of that order. The galaxy that had existed for millions of years was ending, replaced by something new and terrible. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun, written in fire and blood across the stars. President Lisa Carter stood on the observation deck of what had once been Kepler Station. The place where Jake Morrison died was now called Morrison Station, rebuilt by human workers into a symbol of Earth's new power. Through the large windows, she could see hundreds of human ships patrolling the space lanes that aliens had once controlled. 6 months had passed since the war began. The Galactic Council no longer existed. The great alien civilizations that had ruled the stars for millions of years were gone, reduced to scattered groups hiding in remote corners of the galaxy. Their proud empires had become graveyards and quarantine zones where nothing lived except human-made plagues. Behind the president, construction crews worked day and night to expand the station. Morrison Station would become the center of humanity's new galactic government. From this place, humans would rule the stars and make sure no alien species ever again threatened Earth's children. General Ryan Phillips approached the president with a datapad containing the daily reports. His face showed no emotion as he read the numbers, but Carter knew he took no joy in the destruction they had caused. The final Vorthak colony has surrendered, Phillips reported. That leaves about 3,000 crystal beings alive out of their original population of 2 billion. They are asking for permission to settle on an uninhabited world in the Outer Rim. Carter nodded slowly. The Vorthak had been the strongest supporters of Jake's execution. Their chancellor had personally ordered the ambassador's death. Now their entire species was nearly extinct, saved only because a few colonies had surrendered before the human fleets arrived. What about the Luminari? Carter asked. Fewer than 500 remain, Phillips replied. Most of their energy cities have gone dark. The survivors are living in small groups on primitive worlds where they can barely maintain their physical forms. The light beings who had once commanded fleets of ships made from pure energy were now refugees struggling to survive on backwater planets. Their technology, their culture, their very existence depended on complex energy networks that human weapons had systematically destroyed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the observation deck carrying her own set of reports. As the new director of alien affairs, her job was to manage the surviving alien populations and decide their fate. The surrender documents have been signed by representatives of all remaining species, Rodriguez announced. They have agreed to the terms we offered. Complete submission to human authority in exchange for limited survival rights. The terms were harsh but simple. Any alien species that wanted to continue existing had to accept human governors on their worlds. They could not build weapons, maintain large military forces, or develop technology without human approval. Their children would be educated in human schools and taught human values. Most importantly, they could never again claim the right to rule themselves. Admiral Kate Sullivan had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Security. Her job was to make sure the surviving aliens never forgot the lessons of this war. She entered the observation deck as Carter was reviewing the surrender documents. The prison ships are ready for departure, Sullivan reported. We have captured over 50,000 alien war criminals. Everyone who voted for Ambassador Morrison's execution, everyone who planned the frame job, everyone who supported the decision to eliminate humanity. Carter looked out at the ships floating in space beyond the station. Each vessel contained aliens who had participated in Jake Morrison's murder. They would spend the rest of their lives in human prison colonies, working to rebuild the worlds their war had destroyed. Where will you send them? Carter asked. "The mining colonies in the Kepler belt," Sullivan replied. "They will dig rare metals from dead asteroids for the rest of their lives. It seems appropriate that they should work to build the human empire they tried to prevent." Commander Lisa Park joined the group on the observation deck. She had been promoted to Director of Galactic Intelligence after her success in destroying alien communication networks. Her people now monitored every surviving alien world, watching for any sign of rebellion or resistance. "The re-education programs are showing good results," Park reported. "Young aliens are learning human languages and human values. In another generation, they will think of themselves as junior partners in human civilization rather than as conquered enemies." Carter knew this was necessary but still felt uncomfortable about it. The war had been started by alien leaders who feared and hated humanity, but now human leaders were reshaping entire civilizations to prevent future conflicts. They were doing exactly what the aliens had accused humans of wanting to do. The difference was that humans had not started this fight. They had tried to join the galactic community in peace. They had sent their best diplomat to build bridges between species. The aliens had responded by murdering him and threatening to destroy all of humanity. "What about Earth's expansion?" "Carter," asked General Phillips. "Colony ships are already en route to 300 former alien worlds," Phillips replied. "We estimate that within 50 years, humans will outnumber surviving aliens by at least 10 to 1. The galaxy will be predominantly human, with small alien populations living under our protection." The plan was working perfectly. Humanity was spreading across the stars faster than any previous species. Human families were settling on worlds that had been alien homes for thousands of years. Human children were being born on planets where no human had ever walked before the war. Dr. Miranda Foster approached the group with news about her ongoing biological research. The woman who had created weapons to kill aliens was now working to keep the survivors alive and healthy under human rule. "The genetic modification programs are ready for implementation," Foster announced. "We can alter alien DNA to make them more compatible with human society, remove their aggressive tendencies, increase their intelligence, make them more cooperative and peaceful." Carter felt a chill run down her spine. Foster was talking about changing the very nature of alien species, making them into something more acceptable to human sensibilities. It was the ultimate expression of human dominance over the galaxy. "Is that really necessary?" Carter asked. Foster nodded grimly. "These species proved they cannot be trusted with their natural instincts. They will always see humans as a threat, unless we change what they are at the most basic level. It is either genetic modification or eventual extinction." Carter realized that Foster was probably right. The surviving aliens would never truly accept human rule as long as they remembered what they had once been. Their children might learn to live in a human-dominated galaxy, but they would always carry the genetic memory of their species' former greatness. Ambassador Nicole Brooks entered the observation deck, carrying a large book bound in human leather. Inside were the names of every human who had died because of alien actions, starting with Jake Morrison, and including the colonists who had been killed in the early days of the war. "The memorial is complete," Brooks announced. "Every human death has been recorded and honored. Future generations will remember what the aliens did to us and why we had to respond as we did." Carter took the book and opened it to the first page. Jake Morrison's name was written at the top in gold letters. Below it was his final message to Earth and a photo of him shaking hands with alien diplomats who had already decided to kill him. "He believed in peace between our species," Carter said quietly. "He thought we could find a way to live together among the stars." "Maybe we still can," Rodriguez replied. "But it will be peace on human terms, with humans in charge and aliens learning to accept their place in our civilization." Carter looked out at the galaxy beyond the station's windows. Somewhere out there, the last free aliens were hiding on distant worlds, afraid to show themselves to human sensors. They were the survivors of civilizations that had ruled the stars when humanity was still living in caves on Earth. Now those ancient species existed only at human sufferance. They lived, or died based on human decisions. They could have children only if humans allowed it. They could build only what humans permitted. They could dream only dreams that humans approved. The galaxy had a new master species, and that species was humanity. Jake Morrison's death had been meant to keep humans in their place as junior members of the galactic community. Instead, it had triggered humanity's rise to become the sole rulers of all known space. Carter closed the memorial book and handed it back to Brooks. Tomorrow, she would give a speech to the human colonists who were settling on former alien worlds. She would tell them about their responsibility to rule wisely and fairly, to be better masters than the aliens had been. But tonight, she stood in the place where Jake Morrison had died and looked out at the empire his death had created. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, won through blood and fire, and the memory of a good man who had tried to build bridges instead of graves. The age of humanity had begun, and it would last until the stars themselves burned out.